Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I'm your host, Nick. Today, you are listening to episode 83 of Talking Blue, and of course, we're going to keep going with these previews, season preview kind of things that I'm doing, and today, we're talking about the bullpen, 2026 Dodgers bullpen preview. That's what we are talking about today. Before we get into that, though, as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on all of the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue Nick on X, and you can also follow us as well on Reddit at competitive-week8715. So today is March 17th. We are a little bit less than a week away from opening day, so things are getting close. Things are getting exciting. A lot of the players have reported back to spring training. A lot of the Dodger guys that were in the WBC. The last guy is just Will Smith. Tonight, America will take on Venezuela. I think Will Smith is in the starting lineup for that game, but I'm not sure. But Shohei Ohtani, Yamamoto, Hae-Sung Kim, Edwin Diaz, all the guys have come back. Dave Roberts did say that Shohei should get into the lineup. I think he's in the I don't think he's in the lineup tonight. I think he'll be in the lineup tomorrow. And then there should be some updates about what the plan will be as to him getting on the mound. I did see some quotes that said the plan is, by the time he is into a big league game, he is built up for about 3 to 4 innings. So I don't know if that means he's going to be ready to go for the first go round, the first 5 or 6 starts of the season, but we'll see how all that plays out. WBC is about to get wrapped up. The last time I left you guys was America versus the DR. The America won that game. It was a pretty good game. Controversial ending with the strike 3 call, but regardless, America comes away with the win. And then Venezuela took down Italy last night in a comeback win, so they will take on America later tonight. So that's pretty cool. So today we're talking about the Dodgers bullpen. We talked about the starting pitching the other day. Today we're going to do the bullpen. So it is about the same amount of guys. I guess it's a little bit more. It's about, let me count right here. It is about 10 or 11 guys, 12 guys that we're going to talk about. And today I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I am going to go in order, my own little depth chart, basically from the best to worst, starting with the closer and all that stuff. But I have grouped a couple of these guys together in kind of categories of the bullpen. And I'm going to give you guys some numbers, what makes them good, what they can improve on in 2026, how I think it's going to go, a little bit of projections and all that. So let's get started right away with the 2 guys I have at the top, and I have them labeled, actually. So I have the head of the snake, okay? Edwin Diaz, who is, of course, the Dodgers closer, brought him in on the new free agent deal, and then Alex Vesia, 2 best relievers I have in the Dodgers bullpen. And what I mean by the head of the snake is that I do believe that the bullpen is it's like a living organism, the head of the snake. And when you have a closer and when you have another really dominant reliever at the top, it makes things it makes the trickle-down effect a lot easier. And, the Dodgers, I've said this before, the Dodgers have not always been, they haven't gone the traditional route when it comes to their bullpens. Normally, you have a closer. You see it less and less nowadays, because of how matchup based the game is nowadays. The Dodgers have kind of gone closer by committee, and kind of go the more high leverage route. And really, the Dodgers have not had a full-time closer, honestly, since Kenley Jansen was around. And even in Kenley Jansen's last couple years, he had kind of had a little bit of a fall off and then a little bit of a renaissance. And that last year he had in 2021, he had got back to a lot of his more dominant self, but he still wasn't used as the full-time closer at that point. Really, ever since then, it's been a mix of, guys like Blake Treinen, guys like Alex Vesia, Evan Phillips, though all those guys we'll get to at some point. So the head of the snake, Edwin Diaz, Alex Vesia. I'll start with Edwin Diaz because he is the closer of the Dodgers. He will be the full-on closer. I'm sure there will be times in the postseason where you might see him come in a little earlier or maybe even throw a couple innings, but he should be the ninth inning closer guy. That's what he's done throughout his entire career, and that is what he's going to do with the Dodgers. So Edwin Diaz, what I have on my list, maybe the second best closer in Major League Baseball. If you consider his track record and how long he's been doing it, he actually would probably be number one. But right now, he got Mason Miller of the Padres, who's younger and who just straight up has more dominant numbers, and he's the hardest throwing pitcher in the game. So by default, he kind of goes ahead of Edwin Diaz. But Edwin Diaz is probably right behind him, 2 or 3. He's been very consistent throughout his entire career. He really has only had like a few hiccups and really had one injury a couple years ago, which happened in the last WBC. So second best closer in baseball. Edwin Diaz has an elite 2-pitch mix that makes him very good. So he has the elite slider, which is, when I think of Edwin Diaz, obviously before he came to the Dodgers, what made him elite and what is that, like his famous pitch, it was always his slider. But it was interesting to me to find out that he actually had an even more elite four-seam fastball in 2025. He actually had the best four-seam fastball in all of Major League Baseball when it comes to batting average against, 133. That was the best in the game. And then to go along with that, he had an elite slider with a 179 batting average against. So he's, like I said, as consistent as it comes. He has a 2.82 ERA in his career, 519 innings, 839 strikeouts. I mean, just, if you look at the numbers from a year ago, 2025, he was in the 99th percentile in whiff percentage and strikeout percentage. So 66 innings last year, 98 strikeouts. So when it comes to missing barrels, missing bats, he's as good as it gets. Also keeps the ball on the ground at a good rate, and he obviously has an electric fastball. I did see early on in spring, and I think it was early on in the WBC, his velocity was down a tad, but I do think that he was able to get that back up towards the end of the WBC. A 2-pitch guy. It's just the fastball and it's just the slider. He doesn't really throw anything else. But they are two truly elite pitches. And like I said, I was a little bit surprised to find out that he actually had an even better four-seam fastball a year ago. So those two pitches work really well off of each other. And, it's going to be fun to see Edwin Diaz come into the ninth inning and be the closer. Like I said, it's been a little while since the Dodgers have had a true everyday closer. That's pretty cool. So let's go ahead. Alex Vesia, who is what I have here on my list as well, is as consistent as relief pitchers come. So since the start of 2021, the 6th best ERA among all relievers. And when you hear a lot of rankings around the league in terms of like top 10 relief pitchers, you don't really ever hear Alex Vesia's name. And I wonder if being as consistent as he is almost works against him, because relief pitching it's kind of accepted that it's such a volatile position. Like every year to year, there are so many relievers who are so up and down. There are some guys who literally, it's like one year they're dominant, the next year they have a little bit of a fall off, a setback. Next year they're back to being dominant again. And when it comes to relievers, it's kind of like every year by year, you just kind of have who's the best reliever in the game that year, and there's not really like the consistency like you see at other positions that you kind of hold when it comes to like making a decision on who is the in those top 10s and all those rankings. So Vesia, because he's never been like a true closer, or because he's never been like the best reliever in the game, I feel like a lot of people don't really bring his name up that often when it comes to, better relievers in the game. But like I said, since the start of 2021, he's been really, really elite and been really, really consistent. And he really only had one down year. That was in 2023. I think he actually got sent down that year. He had an ERA over 4, but he still had a ton of strikeouts that year. And yeah, like I said, he's as consistent as it comes when it comes to getting strikeouts and whiffs, which is something that is very important for relievers. And Alex Vesia, actually, when it comes to induced vertical break, IVB, which is something I've talked about on this podcast before, he ranks number 1 in all of Major League Baseball. So not just like top 10 or top 5. Number 1, induced vertical break. He has the best four-seam fastball when it comes to staying on plane, that ride at the top of the zone. And it's no surprise when you watch Alex Vesia pitch, what is the most often pitch you see? It's a fastball upstairs, because he has that electric spin on the ball, which really stays on plane well, and it's really hard for hitters to get on top of, and it really almost like it's like the perceived velocity. It really makes the pitch seem faster to the hitter's eyes than it is actually, because Vesia, as his career's gone on and he's gotten older, 29 years old now, which is not old by any means, but his velocity has gone down every year. If you actually look at, every season he's been in the big leagues. 2021, when he first broke in with the Dodgers, 93.8. 2022, 94 miles an hour. 2023, 94 miles an hour. And then every year since then, it's been a steady decline. 2024, 93.5. And then last year was all the way down to 92.7. When you watch Alex Vesia pitch, you don't really see the 97s, 98s anymore. It's really like 92 to 94, occasional 95. But the induced vertical break, it doesn't really matter. That IVB that he has keeps the fastball as like an electric pitch for him. And because of that IVB and because of the spin he's able to get on that pitch, 169 batting average against on the four-seam fastball. So a truly elite pitch. He also has a really good slider to pair with that, and occasional changeup that he'll break out. But when it comes to the way the bullpen works, like I said, Edwin Diaz, is in there as the closer. Vesia goes right to the top of the board as like your high leverage guy. So you're really, whenever you need, whenever the big part of the order is due up for the opposing team, and you need someone to attack that part of the lineup to get outs, preferably later in the game. But sometimes you might need him to come in into the 6th inning, stuff like that. That's what his role is really going to be, preferably against left-handed hitters. Like if you have a lefty lane of 2 of the 3 guys due up are lefties, that's really going to be his perfect lane for him to enter the game. But Vesia is not like a platoon one-handedness side. Like he gets hit, like he dominates lefties but doesn't do well against righties. He does well against both batters. So he can, the way that his style of pitching doesn't really favor one side, he can get both sides out of the play, which is important. So I have those 2 guys at the top. So the next 2 guys I have are 2 veteran guys. Again, I'm going to group these 2 guys together, and I have them labeled as bounce back needed, and I have needed in caps on my computer, and that is Blake Treinen and Tanner Scott, 2 guys who had very strange seasons, to say the least, in 2025. And it's just funny because the Dodgers obviously won the World Series, and we obviously remember they're back-to-back champs and they're going for their 3rd, but you can quickly forget how much of a struggle that bullpen was in 2025, and how many guys, there were a bunch of guys that struggled, but none more than these 2 guys, and they were kind of like the face of why the bullpen was like the biggest concern going into the postseason. Because Tanner Scott was given all that money, big contract, to really come in and be the closer. He was never going to be used like 100% as the closer like Edwin Diaz is going to be, but they were going to give him the most run to be the closer, and if he would have continued to do what he did a year before that when he got traded to the Padres, he would have ended up being the closer. And then obviously Blake Treinen, he's kind of been like the ultimate high leverage guy that the Dodgers have had throughout their multiple championships that they've had. So these 2 guys falling off and struggling the way they did in 2025, they were like the face of the bullpen struggles. And both of them struggled for different reasons, but they're like, both of their struggles for me were like a case study, breaking down like why did these guys struggle. So we're going to start with Blake Treinen. So first of all, in 5 innings pitched in this spring training, he's got an ERA over 10. I do believe that he started off the spring looking pretty good, and the sweeper was looking good, but I think he gave up a big home run the other day. Numbers in spring training don't mean a whole lot. Just because he's got the ERA over 10 doesn't mean I think we're in store for another tough year with Blake Treinen. But I do got to give all the numbers, and that's how he's pitching right now in spring. So in 2025, one of the reasons Blake Treinen struggled like one of the biggest reason was because he had the highest walk percentage of his career by far. In 2025, he had a 14.7% walk rate. That is like really, really bad. I mean, once you start getting over 10, that's getting into really bad territory, and his, like I said, was 14. By far the worst of his career. He's gone back and forth throughout his career of being a guy who allows walks. He's had really good seasons where he didn't allow a lot of walks, but given the fact that he's a guy who throws a sinker, sweeper, kind of has a lot of pitches all moving all over the place, it's not a surprise that he will allow walks. But then when you also pair that with one of the other reasons why he struggled was because he was allowing much more fly balls. Blake Treinen being a sinker guy, it's important that he's always been able to keep the ball on the ground while also getting strikeouts. That's what's really made him dominant throughout his reliever career. 34.7 ground ball percentage, 48.6 fly ball percentage. Again, were by far worst of his career. He is much more closer to 50%, honestly, when it comes to ground balls throughout his career. It was down to 34%. He still did have the strikeout numbers. 27.9 K rate is well above average. League average is about 22%. So he still was getting strikeouts. So some of the numbers do kind of say that Treinen was getting a little unlucky. Now, which is not as much the case with Tanner Scott, and I'll get into that in a sec. So really, what Blake Treinen's biggest needs of focus in this season will be his walk percentage. He's got to be in the strike zone, because there were even times last year when I broke down why he was struggling, and a lot of it had to do with count leverage. He was behind in the count a lot, and that was leading to him, that was leading to more contact. And obviously, like I said, more fly balls and stuff like that. And obviously just overall falling behind in the count, leading to walks. And he just was really bad with his command last year, which is kind of unlike Blake Treinen. And then obviously the ground balls. So he needs to get back to keeping the ball on the ground, and then obviously limiting walks, which is obviously, like, I'm not breaking any crazy news. Obviously, I'm sure Blake and the Dodgers know those numbers, but those are the alarming numbers with Blake Treinen, because he didn't necessarily have like crazy hard hit numbers or barrel percentage. Like, he wasn't getting hit super hard, giving up a ton of barrels and stuff like that. It was really just falling behind in the count, allowing a crazy amount of walks, and then he wasn't keeping the ball on the ground as much as he's opposed to throughout his career. But the strikeouts are still there. The elite sweeper was still there. He still had good velocity, even at his older age. He's 37 years old at this point. The velocity was still there. It is really just about getting in the strike zone, because the more you're ahead in the count, the more you can use that sweeper, which is going to lead to more chase and more strikeouts. So that's the thing with Blake Treinen. I do believe he can get back to that. I do believe he can get back to being a very good reliever, but there is definitely some pause with Blake Treinen because of his age. That's the scary thing. He's 37 years old, going on 38. So it is difficult for Blake Treinen. It is, we saw last year with Kirby Yates when the Dodgers signed him, a veteran reliever. Sometimes when you guys have guys that are older like that, it can go quick. It doesn't matter that, Kirby Yates had an elite season the year prior. Things can go quick, and I don't think Kirby Yates was horrible last year, but when you're older like that, sometimes it's harder to make the adjustments when you're not used to things like, Blake Treinen's been a ground ball pitcher throughout his entire career. Last year was the worst by far when it comes to giving up fly balls, and I'm sure it was difficult for him to adjust to that. So that's the biggest adjustment that he needs. Now, Tanner Scott, it is a little bit different than Blake Treinen. Like I said, Treinen wasn't necessarily getting hammered. It wasn't like his barrel rates or his hard hit rates were were way out of whack. Tanner Scott's, that is where a lot of his issues lie. Now, first of all, let me say this. 5.1 innings pitched in spring so far, 0 ERA, so he hasn't allowed an earned run with 7 strikeouts. So he does look good early on in spring. So I'm going to give you guys some numbers at comparing Tanner Scott's 2024 and his 2025. And by the way, just in case you weren't aware, his 2024 season was elite. He had one of the best four-seam fastballs in the game. He was one of the best relievers in the game that year. That was part of the reason he got traded from the Marlins to the Padres, and he was elite that year. I think he had an ERA under 2, actually. I'm just waiting for the numbers to come up right here. Yeah, in 2024, he had a 1.75 ERA, 72 innings pitched, 84 strikeouts with a 1.13 whip. So he had filthy numbers in 2024. So I'm going to compare these really quick, okay? Average exit velocity in 2024, 84.3. All right, that's really good. 2025, the average exit velocity was 90.8. So it went from 84 to 90. His hard hit percentage, 2024, 27.5 hard hit rate, 2025, 42.3. So it went up well over 10%. His barrel rate, 4.7. So an under 5% barrel rate in 2024, 9% in 2025. And then his ground ball percentage, which he's actually been a pitcher who has gotten ground balls throughout his career, 52% in 2024, which is elite. When you're getting the ground balls at that higher rate, that's really good. Down to 39% in 2025. And then this is another very important one, and this jumps off the table. Pull air percentage. So fly balls pulled in the air. And when you think about it out loud, what do pulled fly balls usually lead to? Home runs. All right. Home runs are the worst thing you can be doing as a reliever. Pulled fly balls. All right. In 2024, 5.8%. So only 5.8% of his contact was pulled fly balls. In 2025, it was over 20%, 20.5%. So a massive increase. So those are the biggest things that jump off the table to Tanner Scott. About Tanner Scott is it was all in the quality of contact, completely dipped. And it's not a surprise as someone who watched a lot of his outings. He left a lot of pitches out over the plate. Tanner Scott, what's really made him good throughout his career is that he's had a very good slider. Being a left-handed pitcher, he's pretty much a two-pitch guy. He's kind of like the left-handed version of Edwin Diaz. He's got great velocity, and he's got a great hard slider. Not necessarily a big sweeper or like a cutter. It's a nice old-school hard slider. And in 2024, he had one of the better four-seam fastballs in the game. So when you get upstairs with that pitch, when you're throwing it, especially with the way Tanner Scott pitches, he's kind of got like that upshoot release. He's not like the biggest guy, so he's not like getting way on top, and it's like Tyler Glasnow who's releasing from a very high release point. So it feels like he's getting on top of you from this, getting way up top. Tanner Scott kind of has like an upshoot. So it's kind of like when you have a release point like that, and then you have the great four-seam fastball to pair with it, you really can work upstairs well in terms of location. And that's what's really made him good throughout his career. This year, for whatever reason, 2025, the past year, I should say, he really struggled with getting the ball upstairs. He left so many pitches out over the plate. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is that Tanner Scott, throughout his career, he's always been a guy who's allowed walks. He's never been a pitcher who has like pinpoint command or anything like that, which is something you see with a lot of relievers. That's not necessarily, surprising. Relievers don't necessarily have the best command. It's a lot of times it's about getting strikeouts. So throughout his career, his his walk rate throughout his career, 8.4. Okay, 11.9. So he's allowed a lot of walks throughout his career. All right, 2021, 14% walk rate. 2022, 15. 2023 was down to 7, and then 2024, which was his best year, the best year of his career, 12.9% walk rate, which is high. But last year in 2025, he almost cut that in half, 7% walk rate. Now, I'm not going to say that Tanner Scott was throwing too much strikes, because I think that there were a lot of people who said that, and it's not the case, because he had the one thing that he did elite last year was that he had elite chase. So he was getting pitches, swings and misses out of the zone, or just he was getting hitters to swing at pitches outside of the zone a lot. But there were some people early on last year who thought like he was throwing too many strikes, which could have been part of the issue. But I just think like when you have elite stuff, the best thing you could do is get outs in the zone, because it limits walks, and it's kind of like the most efficient way to get outs. But he was able to like throw a lot more strikes last year, and you would have thought that would have actually helped his production. But there is something there that throwing that many strikes kind of made him more hittable. So I don't think it's the craziest take, but I don't think that's fully like the issue. The issue with him was really just like he was just giving up way too much hard hit contact. His barrel rates, his hard hit percentage, all that stuff was very, very low as to his career norms. And he wasn't even getting like a ton of strikeouts. In 57 innings pitched last year, he only had 60 strikeouts. It was difficult for him to put hitters away last year. I remember there was a lot of 2-strike hits. And it just seemed like a lot of it was like leaving pitches out over the plate. And a lot of these numbers kind of back that up. All his, quality of contact numbers, the exit velo, average exit velo, the hard hit numbers, the barrel percentage, all that stuff went up. And then when you combine that with the fact that he wasn't pitching, he wasn't getting as many ground balls, and a ton of his contact was pulled fly balls, which is going to lead to homers. It was just a disastrous year from him. And now I do think that both of these guys can bounce back. One, because they do still have the velocity. They did do things the year prior that showed that they can still pitch at a high level. Treinen still has the velocity. He still has the good sweeper. He still has the good downward action on his sinker. And then Tanner Scott still has electric velocity. I mean, there was even a time last year I can remember where Scott got injured. It looked like an elbow issue, and it looked really bad at first. Like that was really a wrap for 2025. He was able to come back a couple weeks later, and his velocity actually ticked up a bit, where he was averaging like 97, 98. So of these two guys, I'm actually expecting a pretty good year from Tanner Scott. I don't think he's going to have an ERA under 2 again, but I'm expecting better quality of contact and a little bit more swings and misses, because I just believe the Dodgers are going to iron out a little bit of his issues. Blake Treinen is a little bit scary because of his age, but I do believe in his track record, and he's been such a good reliever throughout his career, and he was better in the postseason. He still wasn't great. He still had times where he struggled, but I do believe in both of those guys to bounce back, especially Tanner Scott. And I think that with Vesia being higher on the totem pole in terms of the bullpen and being left-handed, I do think that if Scott can bounce back, he could end up being like a lethal weapon, that he could kind of be like a 5th, 6th, 7th inning guy and just dominate lefty lanes, where, like I said, he could kind of come into the game a little bit earlier than, maybe the 8th or 9th, obviously, with Edwin Diaz, or the 7th, or, I think he could pitch a little bit early and kind of be like a early inning kind of a weapon. Again, not necessarily like a long man reliever, but like I think that him getting hit around like he did last year, kind of lowering people's expectations, could be good for him. And I think that he's going to bounce back and have a pretty solid year. But really, both of these guys need to bounce back, because if these guys struggle again like they did last year, it's going to be we're going to quickly be looking to, who can give us outs in the bullpen, and we're going to be looking around, looking for outs. So the next 3 guys I'm going to go to I have 3 guys, young guys with room to improve. And so these 3 guys are Jack Trier, Edgardo Henriquez, and Ben Casparius. All 3 guys had a lot of big league time last year. Henriquez and Casparius actually debuted the year before. Jack Trier was rookie last year. All 3 guys that are projected to be in the bullpen, and they'll definitely get a lot of innings this year. They're all pretty young. That's obviously why I have the young guy stuff. And they're all guys to me that have showed a lot of interesting things at the big league level, but they still have room to improve, to kind of like earn the trust of the Dodgers and earn the trust of Dave Roberts. And especially guys like Jack Trier. Like Jack Trier had a really good year last year, a really good rookie year, all things considered. 27 years old, 76 innings pitched, and an ERA under 3, a 2.95 ERA. But if you go back to last postseason, Trier did not pitch a ton. I remember he pitched in that Red series, but he barely pitched in that Philly series, barely pitched in the Brewers series, and barely pitched in the World Series. And I just feel like that kind of, like an organization will kind of tell you what they believe in you, and it doesn't mean that they didn't believe in Jack Trier, but I do think it means that like his lack of swing and miss and strikeouts were a little bit of concern to them, where they would have rather gone to some other guys. And he was just a young guy, but he did prove throughout the regular season that he could get outs, and he was a pretty solid pitcher. So we'll start with Jack. Like I said, very good rookie season. I have on my sheet here a mini version of Alex Vesia ? Because if you look at the way his pitches are, He actually is very similar to Alex Vesia. 19.6 inches of induced vertical break on his four-seam fastball is 6th in Major League Baseball. So a left-handed pitcher like Alex Vesia, who doesn't have super overpowering stuff, he averaged 92.7, which is exactly the same that Alex Vesia averaged. And they are both induced vertical break guys. The ball stays on playing well. It's got that great spin, that great ride, and it resulted in a really good fastball for Jack Dreyer. 197 batting average against on that pitch, and he also had a very good slider to go with it at 193. He also threw a curveball at well, but it didn't have good numbers last year. So 3-pitch pitcher, and he had a really solid year last year. But what we need to see more from Jack Dreyer is more strikeouts and whiffs in 2026, because, like I said, he had very good barrel rates, and he had a very good expected rates with his ERA and his batting average against. He legitimately pitched well last year, but he had about league average whiff and strikeout numbers. 26.7 whiff rate, 24.1 K rate. Those are like both slightly above average, which is good. You know, when you don't allow a lot of barrels like he did, meaning he didn't really allow like a ton of double home runs and extra base hits and all that, but he's not a ground ball pitcher. He is a fly ball pitcher, and he didn't get a ton of strikeouts. So that's why I'm just saying, like, there is room to improve for Jack Dreyer. But again, just more great depth, and the Dodgers actually traded away for some of their depth in terms of their left-handed pitchers, like Anthony Bonda was someone they traded away this offseason. So it does show that they believe in Jack Dreyer, and I definitely think there's a world where he can continue to get better, especially in the strikeout and swing and miss camp, because I think there's a lot of comps to Alex Vesia. I think he can learn a lot from him, actually, just watching him and the way that he attacks hitters. So it was really good from Jack Dreyer, and I love that he's in our bullpen. And yeah, where does he need to improve? Got to see a little bit more Ks and a little bit more whiffs, so he can get kind of jump up that totem pole and that trust tree in this pen. Because I do think he's got some good stuff. So Edgardo Henriquez, the next guy we'll go to. Super young guy. Edgardo Henriquez is only 23 years old, so he is very young, and he has only thrown 22 innings at the big league level in his career. We only saw him at the very end of 2024, and then he came back last year in the tail end of the year, and he only pitched in 19 innings, and then he was a part of some postseason rosters, but not every one. So again, just like Jack Dreyer, he showed a lot. A young guy who has shown a lot of promise in his career, but he does have room to improve. And like I said, even though he kind of has like electric stuff and he has proven some good things, he wasn't really in the Dodgers like trust tree going into the postseason last year. And that's why he has some things that he needs to show to go up there, especially because he has legitimately some of the best stuff in the game. I mean, the second hardest throwing pitcher in Major League Baseball on average, 100.9 miles per hour is what he averages on his fastball. That is better than guys like Yohan Duran and Aroldis Chapman. The only person who throws harder than him on average is Mason Miller. And on top of that, he had a very solid walk percentage, 6.4. That's very good. Ground ball rate, 47.3, is also good. And then he also did get a good amount of whiffs, 29% whiff rate. But he did not necessarily have a strong K rate. K rate was pretty much just league average. So that obviously means that he was able to get some whiffs, but when it came to putting away hitters and getting that, that pitch, that strikeout pitch, he didn't necessarily have that. And the feel of watching Henriquez does match up with the numbers, because when you look at his pitch mix, it goes 29% four-seam, 28% sinker, 20% cutter. And then you got 13% slider, 11% curveball. I'm not sure where the curveball comes in, because I did watch him pitch last year, and I don't really remember him throwing a curveball. But for some reason, it does say that, so I guess I missed some of that. I just remember the slider and the cutter. Throwing a sinker and a cutter, those aren't necessarily like two pitches that you're trying to get a lot of swings and misses on. Which, again, you don't always need swings and misses to be an elite pitcher. But considering that he throws almost 101 miles an hour on average, but he didn't have an elite K rate, what I have here on my computer is he Mason Miller or is he more Bruce Dargratterall? And what I mean by that is guys who have elite velocity. But Mason Miller is of the most swing and miss strikeout pitchers in the game. And then Bruce Gratterall, who we'll actually get to, and we haven't seen him in a while in Dodger Blue, but he is another guy who throws super hard but has never gotten strikeouts throughout his career. And so what I'm wondering is, which one is Edgardo Henriquez? Maybe, like always, the truth relies somewhere in the middle, and he doesn't necessarily to get strikeouts at the rate of Mason Miller to be a good relief pitcher. But, again, just like Jack Dreyer, we need to see more strikeouts. Because when you throw that hard and you have elite stuff like that, you got to be able to possess that, and it has to be able to lead to some whiffs. Because I don't think that walk rate that he showed, I don't think over a full season he would average a 6.4 walk rate. He doesn't really strike me as that kind of guy, but he did show a lot in his 19 innings. Obviously, the elite stuff, and what I do think is that an increase in his slider usage could lead to a potential breakout, because if you look at all his pitches that he threw, none of them necessarily had like crazy whiff rates except for one pitch, and that was his slider. Every other pitch that he threw had a whiff percentage in like the mid 20s, 24%, 23, 25, which is fine. That's not like crazy low or anything, but his slider, 57.1% whiff rate. That's elite. That is over 50% of the pitches you throw. Over 50% of the times you throw that pitch, it gets a swing and miss, and that's good. So if he could really pair that slider with the four-seamer and the sinker, I think that we could see a breakout from Henriquez. Because obviously the four-seam fastball is not going to get hit hard, because when you throw that hard, it's very hard to get hit around when you throw that hard. And if you could pair that with the slider that got really good whiff rates last year, and I think, if he could increase the usage on that pitch, that is where I think we could see a really good, really cool breakout from Henriquez. Because obviously, when you have a guy throw that hard, it's very fun. So that's what we need to see from him. And this next guy, Ben Casparius, more of the same from him. Now, one of the things I have on Ben Casparius is great depth to have, because he could also be a part of the starting rotation. I don't think he will necessarily, but he's a guy who can throw multiple innings. He's a possible long man reliever / multi-inning guy, which is valuable to have. Now, he got off to a very good start last year and was looking like he was going to be like one of the staples of the bullpen. But then he did kind of fall apart later in the year. But even with his ERA over 4, he pretty much showed a lot of promise when it comes to a lot of parts of pitching and a part of his game. Really, the one thing he was missing was strikeouts, because he had very good walk rates. A very good walk rate. He didn't allow a ton of walks. He had good barrel rates. He was elite when it came to hard hit percentage. He didn't give up a ton of hard hit balls. He did get some chase. He did get some whiffs. The one thing he really didn't get was an elite amount of strikeouts. In 77 innings pitched, he only had 71 strikeouts. So with all that stuff, what I'm thinking is he is very close to putting it all together, and he's also another guy who has great IVB, fastball plays well. We just need, like these other two guys, more strikeouts, and he's very close, like I said, to putting it all together. He's also a guy that does throw a decent amount of pitches: sweeper, four-seam, cutter, curveball. He even added a sinker at the end of the year. So he's a guy that I'm high on and I really like, but he needs to kind of work on, like, what is his out pitch? Is it the sweeper? Is it a curveball? And that will help lead to more strikeouts, because he really has a very good fastball right now, but he's got to work on the off-speed pitches, and I think that's where we'll see the more complete pitcher. And like I said, and like these other two guys, really what all these guys need to add is more strikeouts, and those guys can kind of climb up the totem pole. But 3 very solid relievers to have behind guys like Diaz, Vesia, Treinen, and Scott. So then one guy I'll go to quickly, who I didn't really group with the young guys with room to improve, although he is a young guy with room to improve, is Will Klein, who is on the Dodgers depth chart and is expected to be a part of the bullpen. Super interesting guy. Of course, Will Klein, everybody remembers what he did in game 3 of the World Series, where he pitched 3 innings out of the bullpen, and he was a hero, obviously. But In Will Klein's big league career, 26 years old, he's only thrown 22 and 2/3 innings pitched. So he has very little big league experience. And he's basically been one of those guys who throws super hard and walks a lot of guys. And the Dodgers are going to see if they can, do a little bit of a dumpster dive here, because I believe he was DFA'd last year by the Royals. And obviously he became a World Series hero, so that's kind of cool. But what I have here on my sheet is, could we see a breakout from Will Klein? Reasonable, because I don't think we're going to see like him become like a high leverage guy or anything like that. Possibly. He has the tools to do stuff like that. But when you look at Will Klein, what does he have? He has an elite fastball in terms of velocity, 97.9 miles an hour, so basically 98 miles an hour. Elite K percentage, 30% K rate, that's elite. And he has elite ground ball percentage, 51.4%. So he gets strikeouts, he keeps the ball on the ground, and he throws very hard. All things you can work with. And so when you break down his pitch mix, his four-seam fastball, 222 batting average against. His curveball was actually his best pitch, under 100, 59 batting average against. But then the other two pitches that he throws, a cutter and a sweeper, 545 and then 500 batting average. So I have the sweeper as a pitch that could lead to his breakout, because when you have a sweeper as a right-handed pitcher that you can throw to right-handed hitters, and if that pitch can lead to some swing and miss and to more kind of like more consistency against right-handed hitters for him, I think that's where we could see the breakout from Will Klein, and just need to improve the walk percentage a little bit. Okay, when you're a reliever, you can live with some walks, especially when you have elite velocity and you get strikeouts. You just can't have a 14.3% walk rate, because that's where you get into trouble, and that's where you get into like you can't throw strikes, and it's going to be hard for you to work and get outs at the big league level when you're allowing that many walks. Just need to see a slight improvement in that, and that's where we could actually find something really interesting with Will Klein. But of course, who knows? We haven't seen a ton of him at the big league level. What the things you've seen in the short sample size haven't been great, but he's got things you can work with. He's a big guy who's got a talented arm, who can spin the baseball, who can get strikeouts. If he can improve the walks, and he can kind of add a more consistent sweeper, I think we're going to see some good stuff from Will Klein. We'll see where it goes. The last three guys I'm going to talk about, three guys grouped together, injured guys, who all three we should see throughout the 2026 season. Evan Phillips, Brock Stewart, Brusdar Graterol. Okay, I'll start with Evan Phillips, and I'll be pretty quick with him. If Evan Phillips can come back and be anywhere close to what he was in 2022 to 2024, it takes this bullpen to another level, and the bullpen could be really, really scary. So from 2022 to 2024, Evan Phillips was 7th in ERA at 2.21 among all relief pitchers, 15th in batting average, 185. So he was as consistent as he comes those 3 years. Again, another guy like what we're hoping with Will Klein, and Will Klein is a good example of what we're hoping. A dumpster dive. Like the Dodgers found Evan Phillips, I believe it was from the Orioles, and turned him into a very legit high leverage arm. And his estimated return is around July. He's coming off a Tommy John. Dodgers they actually had to DFA him in the offseason. They were able to re-sign him on a 1-year deal. So we'll see. We don't know necessarily exactly when we'll see him. Like I said, the estimated return is July. We'll see what his stuff looks like when he comes back from the Tommy John. If his stuff comes back the same and he's feeling good, I'm feeling confident that he's going to be a great late inning guy to add in the second half of the season. But we still got some time until we're even close to that. Brock Stewart, the next guy. All right, so what I have again on my list is massive injury-prone pitcher. That is Brock Stewart. Never pitched 40 innings in a season once. And this is a guy who came up as a starter with the Dodgers. And that goes all the way back to 2016. Never pitched 40 innings in a season once. Now, what I have on here is he a mini Evan Phillips, ? Because when you look at his pitch mix, A lot of similarities to Evan Phillips. Really good sinker, really good sweeper. He also throws a cutter as well, and he also has a good four-seam fastball. The only difference is he actually has a changeup, unlike Evan Phillips. The fact that he's a reliever and he can throw 5 legit pitches is cool, and he does have great velocity and, like I said, elite sweeper. The issues with Brock Stewart, obviously, number one is the injuries. He's currently injured now, and he's, like I said, he's had a ton of injuries throughout his career. But he needs to obviously prove that he can stay healthy, but what he needs to do on the field is get better versus left-handed hitters. Okay, in 2025, he was against right-handed hitters a 130 batting average. That's very good. Against left-handed hitters, 344. That puts you in territory of like, we can't have you face left-handed hitters. And when you look at his pitches, a lot of that is because his cutter was not so good. So what he needs to do is you got to be more neutral, especially in this day and age of the 3-batter minimum. You're going to have to be able to get both sides of the plate out. But his estimates, it's possible he could return in April because he's not going to be ready for opening day, but he is like building up, and there is a chance we see him pretty early in the year. So we'll see. If Brock Stewart can stay healthy, I think his pitch ability and his arm talent, it's through the roof what he could do. He could be another high leverage arm. But a kind of a guy that is in the back of your mind because he's got to prove he can stay healthy before you even get there. And then the last guy, old friend, Brusdar Graterol. Who would you believe Brusdar Graterol is only 27 years old? Doesn't it feels like we've had him on the Dodgers for so long. I mean, he was originally a part of that 3-way Mookie Betts trade back in the day in 2020. 27 years old, but man, has Brusdar Graterol since the start of 2024 has only pitched 7 1/3 innings pitched. He has not thrown at all. One of the things I have on here is would love to just get the vibes back. Would love to get Brusdar vibes back. Would just love to have him on the roster and have him on the team because it feels like we just have not seen any of him for 2 years. And that just sucks because he has a great vibe to him and a great energy, and he's just like a really fun guy to have on the team. Now, one thing that is I've come to terms on Brusdar Graterol a long time ago is that he'll never get strikeouts, but he's a soft contact king. So in his career, which, like I said, this goes back all the way down. He has a career ERA of 2.78 with a 61.2% ground ball percentage. The ground ball percentage is 6th in Major League Baseball, all the way dating back to 2019. So he gets an elite amount of ground balls. He doesn't get hit hard. Barrel rates, hard hit rates are through the roof. So that does help. That kind of is a great thing to have when you don't get any strikeouts, which he's never gotten for some reason. That's why I brought him up when it comes to Edgardo Henriquez, like a guy who can throw 100 miles an hour, but you're not getting strikeouts. That's what Brusdar Graterol is, and he's always been that. He's got the nasty sinker, a great cutter, a pretty good slider as well. I don't really have a return date as of now. They're kind of just saying that they're keep being very careful with him. But when you consider his stuff and his ability, a great guy to have in the bullpen, he was always like a perfect like early reliever guy to have in a bullpen. Like when you have a really good bullpen and you have guys late inning that you can trust to get strikeouts, he's like a perfect guy to come into the game like 5th, 6th inning, bottom of the order, get some quick outs. Maybe he can even throw an inning in a third, inning in 2/3, stuff like that. And he's got a ton of energy, and everybody loves him. So hopefully just for the vibes that guy could get back on the mound. So that is all I have pretty much have for you guys. Of course, those will not be all the guys we see in 2026. The bullpen is the most like fluctuating part of a baseball team. Like you're constantly optioning, bringing guys up, signing guys, DFAing guys, injuries, all that stuff. So those are not the only guys, but those are the majority of the guys that we will see. And we'll see. The bullpen really struggled last year in terms of like ERA and a lot of those rankings. They were really bad, but they dealt with a ton of injuries. And it is nice that they do have some staples like Vesia and Edwin Diaz, and a couple of those young guys I think can take another step. But really, to me, the two most important guys in the pen, obviously Vesia and Diaz are the most important because they're the best, but the two most important guys to make this bullpen good and stable is Tanner Scott and Blake Treinen. getting back to what they've done throughout their careers. They don't have to be at that level necessarily. Like Scott doesn't have to be 2024 Tanner Scott. Treinen doesn't have to be 2021 Blake Treinen. But we do need you. They do need to be able to like get outs and be a part of the late inning bullpen. So we'll see. Those are my thoughts on the bullpen. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys also like my new logo that I designed that you have seen on some of the stuff. It's not fully done everywhere, so maybe in the beginning of the video, some of my logos are still the old stuff. But if you look on the YouTube channel, if you look at my social medias, if you look at some stuff, you do see the Dodger logo, or my Talking Blue logo, excuse me. It looks similar to the Dodger logo, so I think that's cool. I feel very proud about that, so comment below if you like that stuff. Got a lot of stuff coming at you guys. I'm gonna drop a teaser. I might have a new podcast coming out where I talk about all baseball, not just the Dodgers. So if you guys are interested in that, I hope you enjoy it. We'll see what that looks like coming soon. And then as well, you can also look forward to the next podcast in a couple days. We'll be talking about the position players, the full lineup, the defense, the bench, all that stuff, the full 12, 13 guys that will be on the roster that are position players. That is what you can look forward to coming out next. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. We're going to have a ton of stuff coming at you guys in the 2026 season. I hope you guys are excited. You can follow us on social media at Talking Blue Pod. You can follow myself at Talking Blue on X, at Talking Blue Nick on X. And then as well on Reddit as well at competitive-wiki8715. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you guys in a couple days to talk about the position players.